want to save your marriage, but you fear it isn't possible unless your spouse does the work with you? Join me as I dispel that myth and guide you through how you can fight for your marriage alone. Can you really save the marriage if you're the only one doing the work? Yes, you can. Now, it doesn't mean it will stay that way. Eventually, your spouse will need to join you in the work. However, it starts with one. And that's what I'm inviting you to do, is be the one who starts first. Someone's going to need to go first. Why not you? So this is important to think about. Your marriage is a mirror reflecting back to you, yourself. Now, I know when your marriage is struggling and it feels impossible, it is really hard to imagine that. But if it were true, would you want to know? For example, respect was really challenging in my marriage. My husband did not feel like I respected him, and I didn't feel like he respected me. Well, I started getting curious. What if the level of respect he was offering me was the same level of respect I was offering him? The opportunity here is to take 100% responsibility for your part, even if it's only 5%. When I started taking responsibility for my part, how was I not respecting him? All of a sudden, the respect in the marriage started increasing, and he started showing me respect in ways he had not respected me before. Now, I am one of countless spouses that have fought for their marriage alone and watched their marriage heal. I have done it myself, and I've coached many, many spouses into this. And I am excited to tell you it's possible. I just had a husband thank me. His wife had been working with me for a year, and multiple times in the year that we'd been working together, they separated. He didn't know if he wanted to be in the marriage. She didn't know if she wanted to be in the marriage, but she was actively working on her part. And her husband came to me and he said, I just want to thank you. We've had a marriage miracle, and I don't know how you did it. But one of the things that was so important to me was that my wife be able to take responsibility for her part, because all of our arguments up until that point had been her pointing at everything I wasn't doing right. And so I didn't want to do the work because I knew that her and the counselor were just going to point their fingers at me as the problem. Thankfully, she chose to start working with you, and somehow, whatever work you did, she began to take responsibility for her part, even when I wasn't willing to take responsibility for my part. And her willingness to go first, I'm so thankful for. And the wife has told me he has thanked her and thanks her often for thank you for being courageous enough to take the first step. That invited me to want to take the step and join you in the work. And he's doing the work, and now both of them are starting coaching. So there is hope. And before I get into the nitty-gritty, I want to encourage you that you need to recognize you need support. If you are the one working on your marriage and your spouse is not joining you in it, I want you to know you need support and you're not alone. So you need others on the journey with you. And you can find your tribe in my marriage growth community, where in the community you will have tools, I will coach you, you will get a community, and this is vital support for you. Now, there are married couples that are working together in the group and many that are working alone. And there you will find your tribe and the support that you need. So I want to invite you to join me in that. You can find the link in the description under this video. The first link you'll find there will take you to get more information about it. It is a closed community, so that means membership only opens up a couple times a year. So if membership is open, make sure you join. And if it isn't, get on the wait list to join as soon as it opens. So let's look at how can you heal your marriage or save your marriage on your own. Well, marriage is like a dance. And you're dancing and, they respond this way and you react that way and they say this and then you say that. And it becomes this dance, almost a scripted, rehearsed dance that you don't even need to think about it or even hear what the other person actually fully says, because you know exactly what you're going to say before they finish, right? Well, think about a dance. It is a set of steps. And when one person begins to change their steps, the dance can no longer stay the same. So your job is to change your steps, because that's the only steps you actually can't have any control over. And one person must change the steps first for the dance to begin to change. You get to look at what you're contributing to what isn't working. Your dance steps are what you're contributing to what's not working. And when you change your steps, things begin to change. It can't help but change, right? So one of you is going to need to change your steps first. And why not you? How committed are you to the love you vowed to have in this marriage? Would you be willing to take the first step? Be the more mature one. Take that first step. And eventually, yes, in order for the marriage to be saved, your spouse will need to join you in the work. And as I said, I have countless testimonies where one spouse started the work and eventually the second spouse joined them as they began, and they have a marriage they never thought possible. That was my story. And my marriage almost completely failed. My husband was, in an affair, and I had already started taking the first steps, and thankfully I continued doing my work. And the affair woke my husband up and brought him to recognize he had some significant work to do. And he began doing that work and joining me in the work. So marriage is 100%, 100%. You often hear the myth that it's 50%, 50%. That's not true. It is 100%, 100%, because in a lifetime marriage, there's going to be different seasons where one may not take their 100%. And if you're like me, you fear that they never will take their 100%. But you know what? I don't think that's true. And there are moments, there are conflicts where my husband shows up and he takes responsibility that I wasn't willing to take in that conversation. And we have a lot of years left to go. And so the beauty of a lifetime marriage is when you will commit to giving your 100%, no matter what, it will come back to you. I promise you. And I've seen it happen many times. So your work, what is your work? Well, it's who are you committed to be as a spouse? That's one big piece of your work. Are you in the marriage as one who gives to get? Which is where I was for many years in my marriage. I need you to plan dates because I'm planning dates so that you'll plan dates. And when you don't plan dates, then I feel taken advantage of. And this is unfair. And this is, you're not romantic the way you were when we first got married. And everything I did was to get him to do something. And that did not work because who I was becoming was more and more bitter and resentful. And so was he. I began to shift and I began to become one who was committed to give no matter what. And that does not mean that I became a doormat, because giving when there's nothing being reciprocated, that's a deeper problem. So now I'm willing to face that and I'm willing to get curious, like, hey, you know what? One, how do you experience me showing up? Like, let's say he's not being very romantic. Right? And I'm committed. I'm going to be romantic no matter what. And I'm being romantic and it's not coming back. Now I get curious. Like, hey, I've noticed this seems to be happening. Can you tell me on a scale of 1 to 10, how much romance do you feel that I'm offering? Because maybe I feel like I'm being a lot more romantic than I actually am. Well, that's really good to learn, and that's helpful, and that helps me learn and grow. And then I ask, on a scale of 1 to 10, how romantic do you feel you're being? And he rates himself. And what do you think about that, right? And he may say, well, that's not what I want. And okay, can we talk about what's getting in the way? What's creating this lack of desire for romance? And then we work through it and we talk through it, because who I'm committed to be as a person is curious, loving, humble, honest, and committed. And as I choose to be those things, it brings me to have the difficult conversations. So if that's you and you're like, what does it even look like to fight for my marriage alone? I want to give you some concrete examples of what that looks like in just some ways that you can begin to investigate and look at your part, because taking 100% responsibility, remember, is taking 100% responsibility for what you're contributing, even if it's only 5%. So what does that look like? Well, you're going to get really honest about what's not working in the marriage and what are you contributing to what's not working? Because that's changing your dance steps, right? Like maybe you feel you have an ugly dance when it comes to the household responsibilities. Okay, great. So what's not working for you is how you each communicate about the household responsibilities or the conversations you've had. So the first step is you get to look at what have you been contributing to that. Well, maybe you've just decided that he just isn't willing to do the work, or she just isn't willing to do the work. So you just keep doing it and you're not asking. Okay, well, that's something you're contributing. And maybe you try and have a new conversation that you haven't had before about the household work. Maybe it starts with you confessing, like, hey, I noticed that one of the things I'm contributing to what's not working about our household work is I have a really high standard of how I want it to work. And I get that I've complained a lot about what you have done, or I've gone and redone it. And will you forgive me? That's not working. And I want to partner with you in the household work. Would you want to partner with me? Right? That was an exact conversation that I needed to have with my husband, because we fought a lot about household responsibilities and had a very ugly dance about it. Right? So then another way that doing the work alone, taking 100% responsibility and fighting for your marriage alone, is looking at what is working. What is working in your marriage? Maybe it is that you socialize really well. Okay, well, what are you contributing to what's working in the marriage? Maybe in public, you're much nicer to your spouse. Well, that's important to notice. And how, if you started treating them that same way at home behind closed doors, how might that start fighting for your marriage and create a different experience? Another way that fighting for your marriage alone looks is looking at what's wanted and needed. Like, what is it that your spouse needs in the marriage? What is it that they want that you've just been listening as a complaint? And maybe they are complaining about it. Maybe they are talking about it, but maybe they keep telling you, like, I'm so frustrated that you don't, with your tone. Maybe, they're just irritated with your tone. Okay, great. Well, maybe you can learn more about that. I recognize that you've been telling me for a long time my tone's not working for you. Can you tell me, can you describe my tone? Like, what do you feel when I have that tone? What is it? What do you think that means when I have that tone? And wow, I can see that that could really hurt you. I can see that that's painful. Will you forgive me? And I'm going to work on that. And I'm going to make sure that, next time you hear me with that tone, would you point it out to me? Because I'm going to make sure that I'm going to work on that. And I may not even realize when I have that tone. These are different steps, examples of things that you can do to fight for your marriage alone. And I invite you to get really specific, like write out some of the steps that you recognize you can take to create the marriage that you long for. I recently heard this most beautiful story where this couple, the husband had a drug addiction and it was getting worse and worse. And the wife started taking responsibility for her codependency in the relationship and how she was enabling the drug addiction. And she started setting boundaries. And, the husband was just acting out more. And eventually they wound up divorcing, and she let him know, like, this is not what I want. However, I'm not loving you if I keep enabling you in this addiction. And it got really bad. They divorced. He wound up becoming homeless and living on the streets, becoming a full-on drug addict. And, she tells the story that she just kept praying for him and she just kept loving him. And sometimes she would think about him and fear, like the weather was really cold out and she knew kind of where he hung out on the streets, and she would send friends to check on him to just make sure that he was okay. And a couple times wound up saving his life. And he didn't know that it was her, but eventually he woke up and he came to, his senses. And he began to work on himself. And eventually he came to her out of, confession and started asking her to forgive him for the things that he had done. And their relationship eventually repaired and they wound up getting remarried. And to hear him tell the story, it is just an expression of love like I've never known. Like how he describes her love for him and how he describes his love for her at this season in how her love changed him. Wow. It gave me the hope. Now, my hope is my marriage never goes there. And, I'm committed to not enable my husband. And at the same time, it gave me a beacon of light. Like, wow, my husband's never put me through that kind of need to love. And would I be willing to love like that if I needed to? And it's brought me to be a lot more committed to doing my work to create the marriage I long for. And again, I want to remind you that fighting alone doesn't mean becoming a doormat, because like in this woman's situation, if she had become a doormat, she would have been tolerating abuse and the relationship would have gotten horrific for both of them. So please know, what I'm inviting you to is standing for love, loving another the way you would want to be loved. And many times that means tough love. And just so you know, you're going to need support. Remember, you're going to need support to walk out your commitment to love no matter what. And I want to invite you that there is plenty of support. If you feel you're in an abusive relationship, please get support. And if you just recognize, my marriage isn't that bad, however, I am the one currently doing the work, please get support. Join the marriage growth community. You can find the link under this video and get your tribe surrounding you. Get the tools, get the coaching, get the support you need. And I'll walk in this with you. So thank you for joining me today. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up so I know that it connected for you and I can create more like it. And make sure you subscribe. And if you really want help or need help or support or just want to tell me what stood out to you, make sure you leave a comment below. Thanks so much for joining me.